In this After Effects tutorial, we're going to create a lower third based on the custom transition that we created in our previous tutorial. Let's get started. In our last tutorial, we created this custom wipe, which looks really good. And if we're creating a custom package for a program, a sports program, an esports program, whatever that may be, it would be nice if we could take the elements that we've already created and adapt them to create a lower third. So let's do that. If you're following along from the last tutorial, great. I'm going to go ahead and select my wipe. I'm going to go ahead and select the final wipe composition because that's where we're going to start. And I'm going to duplicate that. I'm going to go up to Edit, Duplicate, and I'm going to give it a new name instead of Final Wipe 2. Let's call this one Lower Third. I'm going to open that one up, and in fact, I'm going to go ahead and close these other ones, Logo Comp and Final Wipe and Wipe Elements. I'm just going to start with my lower third, and we're going to do a lot of things with this. So I know it may seem counterproductive to kind of deconstruct what we're already doing, but if you think about it, most of the project is already done. The moving in of the layers, which is what we're going to keep, all that motion is already done. We don't have to try to duplicate it. We don't have to try to come close to what it looked like the last time. All we have to do is make some minor changes to our compositions and we're set. And the first thing that we're going to do is go up to our lower third and we're going to extend the time for this composition to something that is much longer, something that will allow us to read someone's name before the logo comes on and then the lower third goes off. So I'm going to go up to Compositions, Composition Settings. And instead of 2 seconds, I'm going to change this to 10 seconds. So 10 dot or 10 period, and we'll get 10 seconds. And now if I stretch this composition out, the first thing you'll notice is, oh my gosh, these layers still only last a little past 2 seconds, which is what we don't want. So I'm going to move all the way down to the end of my composition. I'm going to select all of my layers. Well, not you, track matte. We don't want you anymore. So I'm going to delete this track matte layer, and for my logo comp, I'm going to turn the track matte off, and then I'm going to select all of my layers, move down here to the end of my timeline, and I'm going to press Option right bracket or Control left bracket, and that will extend all of my selected layers to the current time indicator, which is exactly what we want. For the moment, let us work with our logo. The logo is going to appear first, and instead of just moving into frame from, the bottom or the left or the right or the top or whatever that we're going to do with this, hint, it's from the bottom, I'm going to have it kind of appear kind of in thin air. I'm going to have it rise up out of a hole in space-time. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my logo comp, I'm going to move it to the top of my layer stack. Remember, in the way that layers work in After Effects is the layer that is first is the one that is highest up on the layer stack, so it will actually appear above everything else. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to press the S key for scale, and I'm going to scale this down to, 20%, 25%. Let's do 25%. That still seems, how about 30%? That seems about right. And then as far as placement goes, I know this is probably going to end up on some stream, an OBS stream or a game stream or something that's going on, but it's still kind of good to remember our title and action safe areas just in case this would be something that would be broadcast on television. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to position my logo right down here in the corner of the screen. Now this is the HD safe area out here, and this should be just fine, okay? Let us now, with the logo layer selected, let's press the P key. I'm going to go ahead and lose my title and action safe area. And let's bring this in over the course of, 15 seconds. Oh, let's turn these guys off. If you click on the eyeball for a layer, you can make it visible or invisible. And if you click and hold and then just drag over those, you can make them all invisible, which is what we want to do right now because we want to focus on the logo. And if you remember, our logo comp, our logo comp is going to appear first, And it is a composition inside this other composition because we want to be able to very quickly replace the logo with a different logo, another sports team logo, a corporate logo, whatever. One thing that did not happen here, but will happen on your project if you're following along from the last time, is your logo comp will end at 2 seconds. That's because it's also a 2-second long comp. So go up to your logo comp, go up to composition settings, change this to 10 seconds, and then you can stretch it out to the end of your comp. I had made that change prior to starting the record on this tutorial. So I've got it in position, and I want it to rise over the course of, I don't know, I like a half second. I'm a big fan of something rising over 1 second in time, or of a half a second in time. I'll make this a little bit longer. And if you remember what we used a lot of in the last tutorial were the track mats, I'm going to do that again here. So I'm going to deselect everything in the timeline. I'm about 22 frames into the this transition. I'm going to go up and select the rectangle tool, and I'm just going to draw a box around this logo. And if you remember what we did last time, I'm going to toggle my switches and modes. I don't need to, but you may need to. And for my logo comp, I'm going to do alpha matte. Let's get in here close. You hold down your spacebar, you can get the hand key, which will let you move around. And now with my selection tool, I can go in and resize this and move it right into position. Something like that. Okay? So my shape layer is in position. I've got the alpha matte turned on. And now I'm going to use my logo comp and I'm going to move it out of view. Since I'm at the position where I want my logo to wind up, I'm going to go ahead and create an initial keyframe right there, and then back up to the beginning of the timeline, hold down my shift key and click and hold down my shift key and then drag this completely out of view. And you'll notice that as it moves through, it's invisible, 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 and then it becomes visible where that square is and slides into place. It's like sliding out of a little pocket. Yeah, nice. We also want this to slide out of view at the very end of our project. So 22 frames from 10 seconds would be 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, something like that. That's where I'm going to have this lower back out of frame. To do that, I'm going to highlight both of the keyframes in the timeline. So just drag a little marquee around those two, copy them. You can do Command-C, Control-C. And I'm going to Control V or Command V to paste them in place. Now, an important thing to keep in mind, these keyframes are only going to wind up wherever your timeline indicator is. We also have another problem. Bloop, bloop. That's not what we want. So with these two keyframes still selected, what's going on is it rises up and it's literally copying these two keyframes. So between this keyframe and this keyframe, it's saying, hey, go back to the beginning and then pop up again. That's not what we want. I want these two keyframes at the end to be flipped around. So I'm going to right-click on them with both of those two in keyframes selected. I'm going to go to Keyframe Assistant, and I'm going to select Time Reverse Keyframes. And so now if we play through this over the course of 10 seconds, the logo rises into frame, and then after a few seconds, which will be time enough to read a name, it's going to lower out of frame. Of course, it pops back up because we're looping our cycle. The final thing we should do is we should apply some easing in and easing out. I'm not a big fan of easy ease. A lot of people use it just because it's there. I'm going to right-click Keyframe Assistant, and I'm going to ease in. I'm going to ease into that final position, and down here at my other keyframe, I'm going to ease out of that position. So we get something that looks like this. And if you want, you can go in with your graph editor and you can change the curvature of that motion path, speed it up, slow it down, whatever you want. But that works right there. I like that. That's a good way to bring our logo in. Now we need to start working on our color bars. So I'm going to turn their visibility back on. And boy, they take up the frame, don't they? I actually am going to want them to start a little bit later. I want them to start right about the time this logo comes into its final resting position. So one thing I can do is just grab all three of these layers, color layer 1, 2, and 3, and just drag them down so that they start. I want that blue layer to appear like right about the same time. Right now, just ignore the fact that it's already on frame. We're also going to make this look like it's appearing out of a pocket off to the side of our logo. So whether we're using a round logo or a square logo or whatever, it'll look like it's just sliding out from the edge of that. And I want it to kind of appear right after this logo rests in its final resting position. The other thing we need to do is really change the size of these elements. So follow along with me here. First thing I'm going to have to do is go to color layer 1. Let's turn these others off just for a second. Go to color layer 1, go down to contents, rectangle 1. Let's go to rectangle path and let's adjust the size. I would like this to be about 1,000 pixels wide by about 200 pixels tall, maybe 150 pixels tall. Wait a minute, that's not right. Why did that not? Oh, here's the reason why. I did that on purpose. These two properties are linked together. The width and the height of this rectangle are linked. So in order to be able to adjust these independently, I need to turn that link off. So I'm going to change that to 1,000 by, I think 150. Let's try, that seems a little bit too thin. 175, that's probably right about the sweet spot of where I want this to be. A little bit thinner than the logo. Now let's try 200. That looks a little fat, but let's try 200. So 1,000 pixels wide by 200 pixels tall. The next thing that I need to do, we've already got the position working. May have to pull that back a little bit. With the color layer 1 selected, I'm going to bring up the position properties for this layer by using the P key. That's the keyboard shortcut for position. And I want this final resting position to be a little bit closer. I want it to be right about here. So I can navigate between my keyframes by using the next and previous arrows. And I want to make sure that I am on my last keyframe. You can always tell when you're on a keyframe because this little dot right here will light up. So I know I'm right on that keyframe. So I'm going to bring that position back a little bit. Let's say like 820, I think. Is that right? No, that's a little bit too much. Let's bring it out forward just a little bit more than that. Maybe to 850. Let's try 850. And now I need to lower it on the y-axis so that it's right next to this logo. And you might just think, hey, I'll just go ahead and click and drag this down. But if you do, you're going to notice that your motion path changes because when we created the project in the last tutorial, we had created an initial keyframe before we had separated the dimensions on these two properties. We didn't even animate anything on the y-axis last time, and we're really not animating anything on the y-axis this time. So what I'm going to do is just turn off the y-axis position. Now I can drag this straight down. I'm not altering any of my other keyframes, and I want to get this maybe somewhere right around there. Does that look about right to you? You can eyeball it. You could probably even, if you wanted to, select both of these layers and align them together. Let's go to Window, Align, and let us, yeah, I think that's probably going to be it. Right there. So now what do we have? We have this blue bar coming out right there. Now we just kind of need to repeat this for the other layers. So I'm going to twirl down layer 2, contents, rectangle 1, rectangle path. I'm going to unlink the selection, make this 1,000 pixels wide by 200 pixels tall. I'm going to turn on its visibility so we can see where it's at. I'm going to bring up its position property. I'm going to make sure I'm on that last keyframe. I'm going to turn off the keyframe for the Y property. I'm going to back this up to 852 because I do want it to completely cover the blue logo. So these still come out in the same way. For the black layer, though, I want to do something a little bit different. So contents, rectangle 1, rectangle path. Instead of 1000 pixels wide, I'm going to go something like maybe 980 pixels wide. Okay? I want it to be just a little bit thinner than the other layers. What I want to do is I want to have this white layer kind of have a little tab on the end. You'll see what I mean as I go to, with my color layer 3 selected, and I press P on the keyboard. I want to make sure I'm on that final keyframe. I'm going to turn off the keyframe for the Y position. Oh, I need to change the size of that, don't I? I messed that up. Remember? I didn't turn off the scale property, the link property there. So that needs to also be 200 pixels. All right, so now P for position. We're in that position. I'm going to back this up and down to just right about here. I want it to be kind of in the same position. It's about 10 pixels back. And since I made this 20 pixels shorter than the layers below it, another 10 pixels stick out this way. I want to make sure that I am aligned correctly on my Y-axis, though, 904. And now if we look at this, I'm going to turn off the, I'm going to turn on, toggle on and off the transparency here. Now you can see what we have. We have this lighter gray and a little bit of a white tab sticking off to the side. That's just a little aesthetic thing that I want to put in. If you don't want that to be on yours, you don't have to. And those guys slide in nicely. Probably would like to maybe have them slide in a little faster on this. Because what are we looking at? Yeah, we're still looking at about 1.5 seconds to get that all in. A little over a second. So we could, if we wanted to, select all 3 of these and just bring them back just a little bit. There we go. Speed them up. Yeah, that'll work. All right. Now for the slightly difficult part. Maybe the not so fun part. We need to reverse these keyframes down here at the end of the project, right? So I'm going to just start with this one. Copy those keyframes. Move down here. What are we? 1, 2, 3, probably about 3 after that one. 1, 2, 3. Paste that in. Keyframe Assistant. Time reverse keyframes. Now this time we have a real problem. Watch what happens this time. Let me turn off the white and the black. Look what's happening to our blue line. Oh, it's moving backwards. Again, it's the keyframe interpolation between this keyframe and this keyframe. Even though they've been reversed, that's all kind of weird. So the first thing I'm going to do, right-click on this, go to Keyframe Interpolation. I'm going to change this from Continuous Bezier to Linear. And then I'm going to right-click and Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease In. Go down to this one, right-click, Keyframe Assistant. Let's try Easy Ease Out. Nope, see, it doesn't change the interpolation of our keyframe. So let's change that back to Linear. Easy Ease Out, and we should be good now. We're going to have to do that to all of the keyframes. Slides in, snaps into place. It's using that same motion curve that we created in our wipe. And then it just moves out exactly the way we want it to. So let's do that to the remainder of these keyframes. So this one is here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm just going to back this one up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Paste it in. Time reverse keyframes. Oops. Right click, keyframe interpolation, linear, keyframe assistant, easy ease in, Let's just see if this one will do it. Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease Out. Doesn't change the look of that. Doesn't change the look of that. And sure enough, oh man, we do not want that happening. So Keyframe Interpolation, change that to linear. Right click, ease out. Our arrows are looking good. Here comes our white bar this time. It just snaps into place. Like that a lot. And then they should both be going out. There we go. It's looking good. Copy these keyframes. And I'm going to bet we're like 5, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, whoops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, good enough. Paste that in. Keyframe Interpolation, linear, okay. Keyframe Assistant, ease out. Keyframe Interpolation, linear. Keyframe Assistant, ease out, right? Oh, nope, that one's supposed to be, yeah, that one should be easing out of that position. This one should be easing into that position. Did I screw those up? Oh no, that should be an ease out. This one should be an ease in. I had it right. And we'll turn on our little black layer there, our dark gray layer. Oh no, what are you doing, dude? Linear for you. Keyframe Assistant, easy ease in. There we go. No, dude, you're killing me. Oh, you know why? Because we didn't time reverse our keyframes. Yeah. All right. Always important to remember to time reverse your keyframes. All right, now is this one working? Sorry about that. There we go. Slides into position, locks into position. And then reverses out. Looks good. All right, we're getting close to being done with this lower third, and we didn't even have to rebuild a lot of the curves or any of that stuff. In fact, all of our magic stuff, all of our expressions, our color controls, our speed curves, all of that are still the same. I do want to change the color, though. I want to flip the black color and the white color. And to do that, I'm just going to go up here to my color select. I'm going to go over to my effects control panel. If you still had it locked and in position from the last time, it'll still be there. If it's not, you can always highlight the color select layer. Press the E key to bring up the effects for that layer. It's keyboard shortcut E. Double click on that and it will open up the effects control panel there in your window. So I'm going to take the dark charcoal gray, make it white, and I'm going to take the middle layer and I'm going to make it this dark gray so that when we get to this on a screen, we have a white field where our text will display, and we have this little black bar at the end, which for some reason I just kind of like. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. I mean, that was the whole point of changing the size of that uppermost layer, color layer 3. Now, I'll point out that this is a totally different composition. So if you're worried that changing the color here affected the final wipe or the wipe elements composition that we had before, nope. Still the same. Different composition, different expression. All right. Well, we've got the logo taken care of. It's sliding in as it should. I really want these bars, as I mentioned, to come out right at the edge of where our logo is. So once again, we're going to have to create a track mat for these layers. If you remember what we've done in the past, we've had to create other compositions. We had to pre-compose these layers so that the track matte would affect all of them. So that's what I'm going to do again. I'm going to select the color select, which includes our effect controls. And we need those effect controls because otherwise our expression will break. There is a way that we can have expressions tied to other properties and layers outside of a composition. That's a little bit more involved and in-depth. We want to keep everything simple. So for right now, I'm going to select these 4 layers, layer, pre-compose, or learn the keyboard shortcut, Shift, Command C, or Shift, what is it? I forget what it is on Windows. Let's just pre-compose these guys together, and let's call these bars. Move all the attributes in there, hit OK. Timing is looking really good. Next thing that I need to do is we need to create something to mask off the bars. So once again, I'm going to deselect everything in my timeline window. I'm going to go select a new shape layer, and I'm just going to draw out a box that covers that to about there. I'm going to call this one bar mat. I'm going to drag it down above the bar layer, twirl it down, close it. And then here for my bars, this time instead of this being an alpha, I think we want this to be an alpha inverted mat instead of an alpha mat. And now we should have this, just come in. Now, real quick about this bar mat layer, it actually does need to extend outside of your composition so that it's covering over the bars when they're off screen. You don't want this to be positioned something like this, and then you see the bars appear, disappear, and come back out. I mean, unless that's something that you want to do. I don't. So I'm going to position it right about there. So here's what we have so far. I like always checking things to make sure that they look good, to make sure that nothing looks too funky as it's moving around. There we go. That'll work. And if I need to, I can always adjust the timing by adjusting keyframes of those bars inside the bars composition. The last thing that we need to do is we need to animate in some text. I'm not going to spend a long time talking about how to create text, all the different properties of text, but we are going to use some of the text animation properties to get a name and a social media link to appear, or whatever that you want for a second line. So I'm just going to move down here a little bit in the timeline, somewhere around, 7 seconds or so, just so I can see my white text area. And I'm going to go up to my text tool, select it, and I'm just, we could do a couple of things. We could make this completely black, which would be one option. I'm going to make this the same color as this black bar. So I've got my swatch over here that I created a long time ago and imported, but I'm just going to make it this same color, okay? You just select that. Come over here, select that eyedropper. We should be good to go. And then for the font, Typograph Pro, it sure does look good. So I'm just going to use it. And I'm just going to go, I'll just use my name, because my name is rather long. I mean, it's not super long, like some people's might be, but it's long enough. And I'm just going to go ahead and position this. And I think instead of 60, let's see what this would look like at like 75 pixels. That is just big enough. I mean, that's barely, that's right in there, isn't it? Whoops. Use my down arrow to kind of put that into space. You know what? If there's somebody that has a longer name than this, it'd probably be a good idea to make this just a little bit smaller. Let's make it 65. Let's move this back up. Move this down just a little bit. I think that'll work. So that'll be the first line of text, the person's name. And I'm going to go ahead and use another line here, and let's make this be the social media. And I'll use my social media. I'll use my Twitter handle. And this one, we definitely want smaller than the name because we don't want these two competing on the screen with one another. Let's go 55. Whoops. Highlight it, double click, change it to 55. That looks better. Let us align these two. Again, the align layers is always best. I'm going to align these left and then let's see. Let's just move them all down just a little bit to right there, perhaps. That looks good. Maybe right there. You could probably even get a third line of text in here if you wanted to. Let's leave it 2 for now. You can adjust it if you want a third line of text, but 3 lines of text in 10 seconds, that's a lot to read. Let's leave their name, leave their social media. If you want to put a little bit more space in there, or if you want to change the size of this box, you certainly can. Maybe make it a little thinner. I think we were at 200. You could probably go down to 175 if you wanted to, and it would still look good. But let's animate some text onto screen. We want these things to fly on. I want them to be on screen right here, like right after that last little bit of the white box appears. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right there is where I want this to appear. Let's go, just make this a little bit easier to understand. I'm going to move my name up top, the name top, and then the social media next. Since these two layers aren't really interacting with one another, it doesn't really matter. But I think if someone were to come in and they're like, where do I type stuff? They might see this layer called name and see that it's on top and makes that a little bit more clear. I'm going to twirl down the properties arrow. I'm going to twirl down the text arrow. And I want to animate. I don't want to animate the position property of the layer. I want to animate the position property of the text. So I'm going to go out here to where this animate flyout tab is, and I'm going to say I want to animate the position of this text. Okay. This will give us an animator and a range selector, and I'm just going to highlight animator 1, hit return and type position, just so anyone who comes in later and sees this, they'll know that this is the one that controls the text's position. Range selector is I'm going to twirl down, and we have a start and an end selector on here. I'm going to go ahead and hit the start keyframe, and then I'm going to move all this text on the X value. I'm going to hold down the shift key so I can move this off screen a little bit easier. Move this completely off screen. And then I want this to start coming in at not even at the 1 second mark. I want this to start coming in right about here. And I'm going to change this up to, let's see, I want that to be at 0. I want the other keyframe to be at 100%. Okay? And so over the course of this animation, the name comes in. Now what's happening is, if we look really close, it's coming in letter by letter, which is kind of cool. Nothing wrong with that if that's the way you want it to be. I would rather this entire line of text move in. And so what I'm going to do is twirl down the advanced property for this, and I'm going to change the based on from character to lines. Yeah, there we go. So now we have a whole line coming in. I might want to start this just a little bit sooner. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, let's do it like that. There we go. I think that works for that one. And of course we need to, here's another keyboard shortcut that's really valuable. Highlight your layer, press the U key, that's the Uber key, and that will reveal all of the keyframes properties and everything for that layer. Highlight these two keyframes. This also needs to back out. So that starts to disappear there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Paste that in. Is that going to give it enough time to get out? Well, we need to reverse those keyframes. Keyframe assistant, reverse keyframes. I think we could probably move those forward a little bit. Just a little bit, not a whole lot. All right. And then we're going to right-click on this one, Keyframe Assistant, ease in. Right-click, Keyframe Assistant, ease out. Let's just play this whole thing just to see what it looks like. Timing's important. Yeah, that'll work. Other thing we need to do, we need to turn on motion blur for a lot of things. We'll do that in a minute, but just keep that in mind. We also need to turn on the motion blur. Let's apply this same idea to the social media layer. Twirl it down. For the text layer, twirl it down. Animate the position property of this layer. Again, rename it position just to be on the good side of anybody else who will mess with this. I'm just going to have this one come in 3 frames after this. So I'm going to create a initial keyframe, set this to 100%. I'm going to move this completely off screen. Whoops. Let's move this back. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Set the start keyframe to 0. And then we're going to move this social media completely off the screen. Again, we'll have to twirl down the advanced property, change the based on from characters to lines. And this should now, slide in just behind the name. Okay? You remember the Uber key? I'm going to highlight the layer again, press the Uber key so that I'm just seeing these final 2 keyframes. Highlight those 2 keyframes. This one needs to come out about 3 frames before. 1, 2, 3. Paste it in. Reverse. Time reverse those keyframes. Go back to the first frame. Right-click. Keyframe Assistant. Ease in. Right-click. Ease out. We are almost done, ladies and gentlemen. There it goes. Everybody's happy. Everybody can read it. You want the name and the social media to be up long enough for people to read this easily twice, and then it all slides back out. Steven Schleicher at Major Spoilers. Steven Schleicher at Major Spoilers. Steven Schleicher at Major Spoilers. Plenty of time. And it's gone. All right. We also need to hide that text, right? That needs to come in. And also use the same track mask that the bars are using. So again, we need to pre-compose. This is actually a good thing, doing all this pre-composition, because I can take these 2 name layers, layer, pre-compose, and I'm going to call this one name. Move all those attributes in. The next time someone needs to come in to work on this project and they want to change this name, they don't have to go to any particular project to open up. They can just look here in our project window and they can say, oh, name, double click on that. Oh, first name here, social media here. Very easy to change. And here's a hint for a future tutorial. You can actually create an expression, or you can actually use some scripting to have After Effects read from a spreadsheet and automatically populate and change these names. We're going to do that in the future. Trust me, it's really cool. Anyway, back to our lower third. I'm going to take my bar mat. I'm going to duplicate it, Command D, move it up to the very top, take my name layer. We're going to do an alpha mat for that, correct? No, alpha inverted mat. Boom. It's done. Lower third complete. Again, you can render this out with an alpha mat and bring it into whatever application you need to bring it into. If you're working with Adobe Premiere or another Creative Cloud, Adobe Creative Cloud product, you can actually just bring this entire composition in and just position it on your timeline. You're done. You're welcome. Hope you enjoyed this. Thanks a lot. We'll be back next time with another tutorial where we will continue to expand upon this graphics package.